It might be because we're up here.
Test. Yeah.
I'd actually stand up to say this first.
Yeah.
That's all right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Desert Island Discs Blakeney Style. Can't hear me. Right. Well, I'm on. Welcome to Desert Island Discs Blakeney style. Is that better?
You can hold it up.
I'll hold it up, yeah. Thank you for coming and being our audience. And thank you to the Friends of St Nicholas Church for arranging all this. We hope you'll enjoy the evening. And we will be having an interval at which point you can charge up your glasses. My castaway tonight is known to you all as the Reverend Richard Lawry, our rector, the one who baptizes, marries, buries us, who leads, not yet, who leads and takes most of our services, who's thrown himself into the local community and benefice, and has enhanced the life of the church and the village by the use of not Bluetooth, Zoom and YouTube is what I'm trying to say. We were delighted when Richard and Brenda moved into the area, and we hope they'll stay with us for a very long time. Yes. So, Richard, we know you as a man of the cloth, though you're not dressed up tonight, but you're also an actor, a very talented musician, as those of us who were in Cly yesterday noticed, a singer, a composer, a qualified teacher, and at one time, a vendor of ice creams and beignets aux pommes on the beach at Fréjus in the south of France. So, welcome to Desert Island Discs, and thank you for agreeing to be our castaway. Let's go back to the beginning, and you can tell us all about your childhood and your home in Colwyn Bay, I believe.
Colwyn Bay it was. Am I wired for sound all right? Yep, you can hear go. Good-o. Lots of thumbs up. Excellent. Colwyn Bay, yes, that was where I was born and brought up. Spent the first 17 years of my life. And it was a really happy childhood. I was very, very blessed. It was a lovely place to grow up. I had a wonderful family. I had two marvellous parents. My mum actually has just died. It was her funeral last week, so it's quite poignant, really. But she was 96. She'd had a wonderful long life. And my dad died 20 years ago, nearly. But they were fabulous parents. And they brought up our family, which was large and fun and great. I'm one of 5 children, in the middle, in true Anglican style. So we had, it was a blessed childhood, and the 5 of us are still close, very close. In fact, probably closer now than we were when we were kids, actually, but that's normal, isn't it? And it was a lovely area to grow up in. North Wales has got coast and mountains and woods, and it was lovely. We had great fun. We were there because my parents were actually both from the West Country, from Somerset and Devon, respectively. But they were up there because Dad went there to take a job as a master in a school there, a public school in North Wales. So that's why they went there, and that's where we grew up.
Did you go to church at that time?
Yes. My parents were very committed and involved in the church. My dad was a Methodist lay preacher, because it was a Methodist church that we went to, I was brought up in. So that was a big part of my childhood. We were steeped in all of that, so I had a lovely Christian foundation. In fact, my dad himself, later in life, when he was sort of in his late 50s, he got ordained in the Methodist church. So, yeah, it was a big part of our life and their life all the way through.
And what about musical instruments? Did you start any musical instruments at that time?
I did. I started learning the piano, I think, when I was about 7. I can't quite remember, but about then. But I learnt from then onwards, and I've always played the piano, actually. I also learned to play the organ the piano has always been very important to me. It's, so much so that when I did a lot of traveling when I was a younger man, a young adult. Spent a lot of time abroad, here or there, and and I missed the piano when I didn't have a piano to play. Well, you can't just roll up to someone's house and say, "Hello, have you got a piano? Can I play your piano, please?" But there are churches everywhere, so I used to go to the appropriate church wherever I was, and would just say, "Is it okay if I come and play the organ once a week," or whatever it was. So I always had my keyboard fix, one way or another.
Good. Did all the family learn instruments?
They all learned instruments. My brother also played the piano. The others, I think, were all string players. But yes, music was important in the blood, really.
Speaking of which, shall we have your first choice, please?
My first choice. Now, the music I've chosen for tonight doesn't sort of fit exactly chronologically with where we are in the story. But the first of my choices is Sibelius's Fifth Symphony. Now, I'd grown up with music, as I've suggested, really, and it was always a thing for me. But discovering Sibelius's Fifth Symphony when I was, I think, 17, was a revelatory for me, really, because it introduced me to the profound wonders of symphonic music in a new way. Sibelius was an extraordinary composer. He actually, amazingly, he never wrote anything for the last 25 years of his life or something like that. He just had this sort of writer's block in the most dramatic way. But his Fifth Symphony, for me, is one of the great summits of Western music. And we're going to play, I seem to think, the end of the final movement. Is that right? My assistant here on the front row pressing the buttons. So this is the end of the final movement. And if you don't know it, wait for the extraordinary final chords, separated and incredibly dramatic. This is the end of Sibelius's Fifth.
Thank you, Richard. OK, well, let's move on to your secondary school years. I think you went to an all-boys school.
I did. It was all boys for most of the time I was there. It started taking girls just in the last couple of years of my being there, which required some very brave girls, because there was only 2 or 3 of them to start with, you know, so they had their pick of boyfriends. Yeah, so it was all boys most of the time I was there, and I was in this strange situation of my parents were house parents, so they were looking after a boarding house. But you had to be a boarder when I was there. It's all changed now, but you had to be a boarder. So I was boarding, I was away from home boarding in a place about 300 yards from my house. Which is pretty bizarre, but absolutely brilliant, because I could have all the fun of boarding and I could go home for extra food. And yeah, so it was... Yeah, it was...
What did you enjoy most about school, apart from going home to get the extra food?
What I enjoy most? Actually, one of the really enjoyable things was in the holidays living there, if that doesn't sound odd, because it was a school with all sorts of wonderful facilities, and we lived in the school, in one of the boarding houses. So in the holidays, we had the complete run of the place. So we had all these, you know, wonderful facilities like swimming pools, which we could just, and vast open spaces. And with friends, we just had a great time. These huge, great houses, you know, and millions of rooms. Yeah, it was great fun. Good. But the school itself was. It was a good education. There were lots of extra facilities that, you know, I think I had a good musical education by being there, and I did a lot of sports, and there were lots of things I gained from what was quite a privileged situation, really, I think.
I think you did some acting with a slightly unusual outcome on one occasion.
Well, yes, I mean, my first bits of acting were at school, and I was, there was an occasion when, at the prep school, one or two funny things happening. Are you all right? I was in a production of The Merchant of Venice at the prep school, because I went to the prep school first before I went to the senior school. And I was Shylock. I don't know if you know The Merchant of Venice. I was Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, the main part. And it was, you know, it was slightly abridged because it was a prep school. Anyway, we did the performance, and after the performance, and lots of parents were there, one of the fathers of someone in the school came up to me and said, "Oh, that was really good, thank you very much indeed. Could I have your autograph?" and I went, you know, just assuming he was joking. And I realised, no, he wanted my autograph. He was a slightly odd bloke, but no, it was rather touching, yeah.
Good. And coming to the end of your school life, did you have any ideas of what you wanted to do, like become a vicar or a...
Absolutely not, no. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left university, never mind school. But no, I went to university, I went to Bristol.
You can't get onto that yet.
Can I not? Okay.
We've got the second disc to come first.
Oh, second disc, oh,
yes,
right,
yes.
okay. No, I had no idea.
Before you go on to that, didn't you say this was your time of rebellion?
Yes, oh yeah, I was absolutely ghastly when I was for a year, when I was about 16, 17. My parents hardly got a word out of me. Must have been awful. And it was part of the wonder of what great parents they were. They were very, very patient and just sort of, you know, waited for me to come through my phase, my late adolescent phase. So, yeah, I was a pain in the neck for a year, but I got it out of the system.
OK, let's have your second disc. What is it?
Well, actually, around this time, I'm going to play a piece of Elton John. And Elton John is someone who I very much enjoyed at that time. And he's he's actually a classically trained pianist. I think he went to the Academy, Royal Academy, yeah, that's right. And then he went into rock. But he's a very talented musician, and he wrote some great songs with Bernie Taupin, who wrote the lyrics for him at that time. And one of them was Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And I'm playing this because when tapes first came out, I bought a tape player and a tape of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And I went on holiday with 4 mates on a boating holiday on Lake Windermere. And this was the only tape we had. We played this all week, and I still liked it at the end, and I still do, so it must be good. So, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And incidentally, the good thing about doing Desert Island Discs this way is that we've got a bit more time than they have on the radio on a week-by-week basis. So we can play a little bit more of the music than would otherwise be the case. The interesting thing about Elton John is I always find you look at the words to the songs and they don't seem to bear any resemblance to what he seems to be singing. Yeah, anyway.
So then we'll let you go to university now. You went to Bristol and you read German with Archaeology and Ancient History subsidiary. So why that choice?
Well, the German was a choice, the archaeology wasn't. It was actually an administrative mistake. I went to Bristol to study German with music subsidiary. And I went to register at the German department. Hello, yes, welcome. And I went to register at the music department. Hello, who are you? And I said, Richard Lawry. They looked down the list. No, sorry, there's no sign of you here. Oh, well, can I do music anyway? Have you got music A level? No, I haven't, no. Oh, well, I'm sorry, you can't come then. So I went back to the German department. I said, what else can I read as a subsidiary to German? And the only one you didn't need an A level for was archaeology and ancient history. So I went off to them and I explained the problem. I said, can I study archaeology and ancient history? Of course you can, come in. And it was interesting, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
What else did you get involved in at university besides the work? I'm sure you didn't only stick to the work.
Work? What was that? I did the necessary work, but otherwise it was mostly parties, I think, really. I had a great time at university, but it was a bit wild, and I lost my way a little bit. And actually, I lost my way in terms of faith because I was far too busy having a wild time, and you know, faith and that sort of thing just gradually took a back seat. So really, all the time that I was at university and all the while through my 20s, I wasn't going to church. So that came back. You know, we'll get onto that, I'm sure, but that came back later on. But I was doing sport at university. I was doing various cultural things. I joined the Dramatic Society at university because I liked acting, and I did a couple of productions, and I gave it up because I was getting so fed up with these student actors who were trying to behave as they thought professional actors behaved. And they're just being so pretentious. I thought, I can't be doing this. So I gave that a miss and did other things. But
what sports did you do?
Rugby, cricket, squash. Not football at that stage, I don't think. But I mean, I've always loved sports. I've always been a sport nut, really, either playing or just following it, whether it's. Cricket is the best game of all, isn't it? Especially Test cricket.
You had a year in Germany as part of this
I did.
course. It was a 4-year course.
Yeah.
So what were you doing in Germany?
I was studying at university in Constance, on Lake Constance, if anyone knows it. It's a lovely area. And that was part of the course. So the third year was out there, which was much the most useful year of my course in a way, because I learned how to speak German out there, which is what I went to university to do, really. It was a very literary-based course at Bristol, so it was an awful lot of literature and not quite enough language, but I really learned the language out there and got to know the culture, and so yeah, that was a great time. It was a good year.
Let's have our third disc.
Third disc. Let me just refer to my piece of paper. Yes. Now, the third disc, this is Mahler. Now, again, this is going to be jumping ahead a little bit, but the first concert that Brenda and I ever went to together after we started going out was a concert including Mahler's Fifth at the Royal Albert Hall. And one of the things that it's memorable for was that we were a bit blown away by this concert. It was just fantastic. And at the end of the concert, we were just sitting there, just bathing in all of this, you know. And then eventually an usherette or something came up and said, "Excuse me, everybody's gone. Would you like to leave now?" We were just sitting at the back of the gallery, wherever we were, you know, and hadn't noticed that the whole hall had emptied, and they were wanting to lock up, you know. So we went. But we're going to play a little bit of the Adagietto, which is the slow movement of Mahler's Fifth, and some of you might know it actually from the film Death in Venice, Visconti, I think it was. The film Death in Venice was used as part of the soundtrack for that. It's very, very beautiful, slow movement, Mahler's Fifth.
It is indeed very beautiful.
It's an amazing thing. And it just pulls at your heartstrings, doesn't it? Amazing.
Now, Richard, you're now a graduate. What next? And I think you didn't have an idea at all.
No. I came out of university having no idea what I wanted to do. A state of play which continued for a few years. So I came out of university and I went back to Germany first of all, to where I'd spent my year out there, and worked for a translation company, which, funnily enough, I mentioned in a sermon last Sunday. Yeah.
But there was something about a girlfriend then.
Which particular one would that be?
Well, the one that the man told you not to take advantage of, but go and work.
No, that's right. There was more girlfriend trouble. But that didn't work out. So I came back to this country. I worked in an assessment centre for delinquent children for a while. That wasn't right. I didn't do that for very long. I decided at some point during that year that perhaps I wanted to be a teacher. So I, as it were, booked a place for myself to do a PGC, a postgraduate certificate education, the following year. And and went abroad to work for a while, just while I was waiting. So I went to Italy and spent 4 months there, and teaching, unqualified, but teaching English. Had a wonderful time there. Italy is the most extraordinary place. I have a sister who lives out there, so it's become a special place for me. And I learnt the language there, which was helpful. Then I went to France, and as you mentioned in your introduction, Jill, I worked for 3 months selling ice creams on the beach in the south of France.
Was it as hot as last Tuesday?
No. It was hot, but it wasn't that hot, I don't think. So, yeah, I was doing sort of various interesting things during that time. And then I went to Cambridge to do a PGCE, to train as a teacher, and I realised halfway through the year that I didn't want to do that either, that wasn't right. So it was a very, very circuitous route to ordination I've taken. So I finished that year anyway. I thought, well, you know, let's do this. And then I went to Africa for a year to teach. I thought, well, I'll just sort of use it while I'm working out what I wanted to do next. So I went to the Sudan, where Jill also spent a year, but we didn't know each other then.
Before you.
And I spent a year teaching English in a secondary school in Port Sudan, which is on the Red Sea, which were in the Arab north. Sudan at that time was sort of divided between the Arab north and the African south. This was in the north, and I taught there in Port Sudan, and learnt an awful lot in the University of Life along the way. I came back to this country, still not knowing what I wanted to do. I just fell into a job working as an oil journalist, knowing nothing about oil or journalism. I did that for 2 years.
The Archbishop of Canterbury was in the oil business.
He was.
Yes.
He was. He knew a lot more about it than I did.
Obviously drives people to become clergymen.
Yes, that's true. And then in the... I'm just ploughing on. Is this all right,
Yes,
Jill?
yes.
And then while I was doing that, I had a chat with myself one day, and I said, what do you really want to do? What would you really fancy doing? And I said, okay, well, what I really fancy doing is being an actor. So I thought, well, let's give it a try.
Okay, well, before we get on to how you got into that, let's have disc number 4, please.
Disc number 4. This is something by an amazing musician called Gwilym Simcock. Now, Brenda and I love jazz, and we also love Norway, and they come together in this piece. Gwilym Simcock was, he's an amazing jazz pianist and composer. Very, very talented guy. He was actually at Chetham's, where Brenda was working until we came down here. We're going back a little bit now, but not that long. And he's a fabulous, an incredibly inventive musician. And the track that I'm going to play you some of is where he takes the slow movement of the Grieg piano concerto. That's why it's bringing Norway into this. Which I'm sure lots of you will recognise, will know. He plays the main theme on the piano straight, and then he improvises for the rest of the track. And so we'll play you the theme and the first improvisation to give you a flavour of his brilliance. goes. There's something slightly odd about the sound on that, actually. I'm not quite sure what it is, but very beautiful. He's a very, very versatile composer and arranger as well. Mm.
Okay, let's get back to acting. So you decided you'd be an actor, just like that.
Yeah. Well, I thought if I'm going to be an actor, I better train. So I applied to one or two drama schools in London and didn't get into any of them. So I thought, all right, then I won't train. I'll just jump in the deep end. So I bought a copy of The Stage, the theatre newspaper. Looked in the adverts, thought, well, that looks interesting, I'll go for that one. So I applied for that. I applied for one or two, I'm sure. But the first job I got was with the Yorkshire Theatre Company, which was a travelling theatre company, doing a production of Man is Man, which is a relatively obscure play by Bertolt Brecht, not one of his best-known ones. And they wanted an actor who played the piano, and I managed to get that job. So I did that, and that was a good start. You know, you got one under your belt, and you can sort of move on to another one, and so on. So
just before that, you told me a story about an interview you went for, where you had to sing.
Yeah.
In your early days as...
Now, because I had no training, I was completely wet behind the ears about the business. You know, I had no idea how it operated. So I answered an advert where they said, you know, bring along a piece, you know, audition piece, a monologue from soliloquy from some play, and something to sing. So I went along with a soliloquy and something to sing, and I did the soliloquy, and the director said, okay, now what have you brought to sing? And what I brought was Liberame from Fauré Requiem. And so I started singing this, and I could sort of see the bloke's jaw drop, really. What I didn't realise is that something to sing, you know, in theatre auditions means a song from a show, you know. And I came along with Fauré Requiem. I didn't get that job. So, you know, I had lots to learn. I was just learning as I went along, really, and obviously doing it is the best way to learn. So the more jobs I got and the more acting experience I got, yeah.
Anyway, you really enjoyed the time with York Theatre, you said, and you travelled around with your play.
Yeah, and my mum and dad came to see a production of it, a performance of it. It was Leeds Poly or something like that it was. Little theatre, and there were 6 people in the audience. There's lots of that, you know, with these sort of small-scale theatre companies at the beginning. And the character I was playing was an aggressive army type who, in true Brechtian style, had to harangue the audience. So there's 6 of them in the audience. My mum and dad were here. And I was going for these 4, who must all have been saying, what's wrong with those 2 over there? You know?
OK, well, after York, what happened next?
What happened next? Well, I did various jobs. I mean, you know, sort of also a mixture, really, musicals and straight stuff. But it was all street theatre. It was all just getting experience, really. But I needed an equity card, because, you know, if you haven't got an equity card, you can't get good jobs. And it's catch-22. You can't get good jobs if you haven't got an equity card. And it's much easier to get your equity card now, actually, but it was hard then. So what I did, I was doing a show with 4 other people, and they all wanted their equity card. So we thought, we'd heard that there was a loophole. You could get your equity card through the alternate cabaret circuit, alternative cabaret in London. So we devised this show of sketches and songs, all about famous foursomes. And we all looked completely different physically. So we called ourselves the Identical Quads. And we did this show of sketches and songs. And we got the necessary 8 contracts in order to get our equity cards doing this. But some of them were extraordinary. I remember there was a place called the Tunnel nightclub in Dartford. And their idea of a good night out was to see how long it would take to heckle the act off the stage. And they were appalling, you know, they were just shouting abuse. So we did our act for about 5 minutes, and we all looked at each other and said, life's too short for this, isn't it? And walked off.
Quite right, too.
Anyway, we got our equity cards, and then we were fine.
And then you went to work for the Old Vic?
Yes. I got a contract with the Old Vic for a year, which was, that was, you know, the first of the sort of exciting things I was doing, really, I suppose, which was a great experience and also a great, you know, training ground as well. But it was Jonathan Miller's, do you remember Jonathan Miller? It was his first year as artistic director there. And he did 6 interesting and very different plays with lots of fabulous people in them. And I had small parts in each of those. And it was a marvellous year, actually. Very instructive and educational and good fun. And then I was very fortunate. I went straight from there into a year at the National Theatre, most of which was in a production of Hamlet, which was really, really interesting for both sort of good and bad reasons. It was interesting because it was a great production, I think, and also we toured it. So we took it to Japan and Hong Kong as well, and Dubrovnik. But it was also a bit sad because Hamlet was played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who was wonderful, excellent. But he had a breakdown halfway through. I mean, I haven't got time to tell you the full story, but so Daniel had to back out and actually didn't do any more theatre work for many years, but some great film work, as you're probably aware. And then so Hamlet was taken on by Ian Charleson of Chariots of Fire, and he did it for a while, but then he was so ill he had to back out, and he actually died a short while later, and then his understudy Jeremy Northam took over. He was actually a good friend of ours. In fact, Jeremy is the reason we're here, because Jeremy, we first came to Norway, to Norfolk, when we visited Jeremy Northam, who had a cottage in Charrington. So Jeremy's part of the reason we're here, really. But he took over, and it was sad in the sense that there were tragedies along the way, but it was wonderful, and Judi Dench was Gertrude, is just completely fantastic. Yeah.
And by this time you had an agent, didn't you?
Yeah. I'd had an agent for a while, but by that time I had a good agent, because an agent makes a difference, really. And the first agent I had was, you know, she was fine, but she just didn't have the contacts, really. And so I got a better agent, and then another agent again a bit later, and that helps, yeah.
And I think during your time you visited the Edinburgh Festival, but before we get on to that, which will be after the interval, where you had one of the major encounters of your life, record number 5.
Record number 5.
Should I say?
Yes. This is something a little bit different again. I decided that on the desert, if I was going to be on a desert island, on Sundays, I was going to want some sacred music. Not that all music's sacred, everything's sacred, because God's in everything and God's everywhere. But, you know, in that sense, some sacred music. So I thought, I will take with me an anthem called O Thou the Central Orb by Charles Wood, which was something I got to know and sang and got to know and love at school, and have sung in since. And for me, it is just one of the most fabulous anthems ever written. Charles Wood wrote the music, and we're going to listen to the sort of second half of it, really, so we take in the climax. And that was a foretaste. They're wonderful words as well. I meant to print them out so I could just read you some of them. But let thy bright beams disperse the gloom of sin, transporting day into light, darkness into light. Marvelous, marvelous words. It's a great thing. If you don't know, have a Google it. O thou the central orb.
Well, thank you, Richard. We're going to take a break now, about 15 to 20 minutes, and when you hear the theme tune of Desert Island Disc being played again, please return to your seats. Do have some more to drink, and
You are. But it's sort of slightly...
Well, they say that I keep talking to you and they don't hear it.
Yes.
So
If you talk this way, you should be all right, yeah. Well, neither of us have... Hang on, I'm on at the moment. Neither of us have fallen off the back of the plinth yet, so... It's a good wheeze, isn't it, having this music to tell people to...
Yes, I can't do this.
Come back to the front. Oh, hang on.
Oh.
Yeah, there we are.
That's on. It's working.
You're on.
It's not green there.
No, but it doesn't change.
Yes, it is. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Coats, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah. Just turn this off a minute. This sound is working fine. I don't know what it was with the Gwilym Simcock. This wasn't quite there. Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, Richard. So you went to the Edinburgh Festival as part of your acting career, and it changed your life, I think. Yes, it is working.
Yeah.
Okay. You went to the Edinburgh Festival, is that better? And it changed your life.
Down a bit, but try that.
And it changed your life. Okay. I'll hold it.
Can you hear me all right? Okay. I've raised it slightly from the first half. I mean, I can do it like this if you want, but... Yes. So, yes, Edinburgh changed my life. I was doing a show on the Fringe at the Edinburgh Festival, and I was working for a theatre company and doing a couple of shows up there. One was an Alan Ayckbourn play, and the other was a Victorian melodrama, which we did late at night, and we did it straight, but for laughs. And it was quite successful, really. And this is where I met Brenda. And oohs and ahs, because Brenda was doing the music for this show. But she hadn't been, we rehearsed in London, but Brenda had been ill while we were rehearsing in London. So the director discovered that I could do music as well. So he said, would you look after the music while the musical director is ill? So I took charge of the music and sorted it out for this show in the rehearsal. And then we went up to Edinburgh. And up in Edinburgh, I met Brenda, and we literally met over a keyboard. Because we were at the piano, and, you know, I passed over to her for the performances, the music, which and we worked through it together and so on. So the piano had been important to both of us in different ways in our lives already, and it became incredibly important after that. Yeah, so that changed my life a bit. Do you want me to carry on, or have you got another question for me?
Well, it depends how much you're prepared to divulge, I think.
Well, suffice it to say that Brenda and I, having met and discovered a little bit of chemistry between us, it was a complicated situation because we were both going out with other people. Anyway, we managed to extricate ourselves from those, and we were both living in London at that time. Came back down to London and continued with our lives. Went to the Mahler concert, which I played you earlier on, etc. Do you want me to talk about Brenda or music or acting?
Bit of Brenda and music, I think, so.
Bit of Brenda and music. Brenda at the time was a freelance musician, and I obviously was an actor. We met in the August, wasn't it, of 1986. We realised very quickly that we wanted to marry each other. We were engaged within 6 months and married 9 months later. So we got married in 1987. So we thought, you know, if we know we want to do it, let's get on with it, sort of thing. So we married in 1987 in Sheffield, where Brenda grew up, and in the church where she came to faith, in fact, as a teenager. So that was lovely as well. And that was 1987, so we've been married for 35 years. It will be this year, yeah. And it's been a complete joy all the way.
Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that, Richard.
Did I say the right thing?
Of course.
Yeah.
And Brenda would say the same. Anyway, how did it work with you acting and her being a musician? I mean, were you travelling at all at the time?
Yeah. Yes, I was travelling quite a bit, you know, if I was with touring theatre companies or whatever it may be. Brenda was away doing her own thing. So at that stage in our lives, we were quite used to being apart for periods of time, and just enjoyed being together when we were. But, you know, I mean, being an actor, you're not working all the time. You have periods when you're looking for work and you're at home and waiting. So
resting, I believe.
Resting, indeed, yeah. So we had plenty of time when we were together as well, yeah.
And I think Brenda was a churchgoer.
Yes. Meeting Brenda was the trigger, really, for my rediscovering my faith, and all that has flowed from that. Brenda was going to a church in Ealing in West London, where she lived, and we started going out. So I would go to church with her sometimes, just, you know, to encourage her, and because that was what she did. But things were not dropping into place for me in spiritual terms at that time, and the church which Brenda went to didn't float my boat particularly, so that wasn't helping either. So one of the things we did was we used to go along to Westminster Abbey, among other places, because Brenda realised that what spoke to me was beauty and the numinous and wonder. And so we would go along to Westminster Abbey, and, you know, I would see the glories of the building and hear the wonderful music and the art and all the rest of it. And it just helped me to remember that there was something much more about life than the immediate and the personal. And it was things like "O Thou the Central Orb," you know, that I played earlier on, which just helped me to realise what was really important. And so gradually the dots were joined up, the bits of the jigsaw fell into place for me again, and I came to realise again, and in a new and deeper way, that there was something really wonderful behind all this, and a loving God. So there was, my life was sort of transformed again through that process, and Brenda was the original trigger for that, the catalyst, the main one.
I think you went out to India at this point as well.
I did. In the early 90s, I was sort of partly wrestling with what I was doing with my life, and partly just thinking in bigger terms. And it was a stage where I felt I was beginning to wonder if there was more to life, or more that I could be doing than acting. I'm a great supporter of the arts. The arts are really important, and they are a great way of discovering joy and truth and so on. But I was beginning to wonder whether, for me, I needed to be doing something which was giving in a different sort of way. And I went out to India just for a month to work in one of Mother Teresa's homes there in Calcutta. Prem Dan, the home for the destitute and dying in Calcutta. And it was an important thing, I think, for me, just to begin to think outside the box a bit. It was also very distressing, because I don't know if any of you have been to Calcutta, but that level of urban poverty is very hard to deal with. It's very upsetting. I'd spent a year in Africa, and I thought I'd seen poverty. Well, I had, but rural poverty and urban poverty are two different things. And it was hard, but it was what I saw in Mother Teresa's sisters working in this place was wonderful. And I think it was subliminally part of the inspiration which made me think, do I need to be giving my life in a different way?
Well, I think it's time for record number 6, disc even.
Yeah.
Brenda?
Well, it's a big jump from Mother Teresa to Bill Evans, but I mentioned that Brenda and I love jazz, and we often listen to jazz in the evening. When Brenda was working at Chetham's School of Music in Manchester as head of accompaniment there, that was full-on classical music all the way. And the last thing she wanted to listen to when she got home at night was classical music. And that's one of the reasons why we've tended to listen to a lot of jazz. We love jazz. Bill Evans is, for me, one of the foremost jazz pianists that's ever lived. He's a genius and writes and plays some wonderful music. And this is something which we'd often listen to. This is actually from an album called The Paris Concert, which is a live recording of, surprisingly enough, a concert in Paris. This is called Up With the Lark, this track we're going to hear a little bit of. Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. There's clearly something tonight not quite working between Spotify on the phone and the speakers. It was working fine when we tried it earlier on. So it may be. It's perhaps just worth saying we're recording this and streaming it. So if this is available, hello anyone watching now. This is available afterwards on the St Nicholas Church Blakeney YouTube channel. If you want to, it may be that the sound will come out better on that than it is here at the moment. We'll see.
Okay, Richard. Well, I think you decided you'd go for ordination then.
I did. It was a long process, actually, between starting to think about whether God was calling me to ordain ministry and actually being sure that that was right. It took a few years of discussion and soul searching and prayer and talking with quite a few people, really. One part of it was that we used to go to church, and obviously by this stage I was sort of fully committed to our church and to faith and so on. We went to church in Putney in southwest London, which we were living in Roehampton, just next door. And there was a point where, within a short time, several people all said to me, unsolicited, at different times, "Have you ever thought about getting ordained?" And my answer was, "No, I haven't." But then after a bit, I started thinking, well, do I need to be taking notice of this? Is this perhaps one of God's way of talking to me through other people? So I did start thinking seriously about it and praying about it, and it did seem to be the right thing. So, and I was getting sort of dissatisfied in some way with being an actor and the acting profession. But I wanted to be sure in my own mind that I was offering myself for ordination, not because I was getting fed up with the acting job, but because God was calling me to do this. And that was part of what took me such a long time to be sure that was what was going on. And then when I had my moment of clarity, and I just suddenly felt absolutely sure God was saying, "I want you to get ordained," then we were off, and the process was underway. But it was an interesting and long process, and obviously something I can't describe very quickly now.
And you went to St John's, Nottingham, I think? I
did. St John's College in Nottingham, Theological College, which has recently closed, unfortunately, but I had an interesting time there, and I was actually a guinea pig for the Church of England, in the sense that I was the first to do a new type of training, which was like a sandwich course. It was called mixed mode training. So rather than going to theological college for 2 or 3 years, total immersion, and then being catapulted into a parish as a curate, I did both in parallel. So I was at the college for periods of 5 weeks at a time, but working as a lay curate in a parish in Macclesfield for 4 years, and I was ordained halfway through. And after ordination, I continued to go back for periods of study at college, which was very good because, one informed the other. You could put into practice on the ground what you were learning in college, and you could take back to college what you were learning on the ground. It was good. And it also meant that we could continue to live where we were, because Brenda was in a very specialised job and she couldn't have just got another similar one in Nottingham. So, yeah, it was a good way to train.
Well, Brenda wasn't yet at Cheetham.
Yes, she was.
Oh, she
yes,
was,
she'd
right,
been at Cheetham for some time.
Yes, I see,
yeah.
yes. And you were another 2 years, then you say, as a curate. And then?
And then we went to Stalybridge, which is on the east end of Manchester. We stayed, for all these years, we stayed sort of in and around Manchester so that we were in commuting distance for Brenda's job. So I became a vicar in Stalybridge, which was a large parish, mixture of affluent and deprived, a big church, a big building, not quite as big as this one, but a big and rather beautiful building, really, with what had been the largest churchyard in England. It had been, was halfway through being transformed into a sort of landscaped area, and it was a nightmare. It was all sorts of things went wrong with that, but it was a big area. So that was and I was there for 7.5 years, I think it was.
And how did it feel having your own church after being a curate?
Well, it's exciting and daunting, really. You know, finding that you're responsible and sort of, you carry the can for everything that happens there. Nice to be able to have the freedom to do what you want to do, but the change from being a curate to being an incumbent, don't let me alarm you, Sarah, is quite significant, because suddenly you're actually in charge rather than part of a team. There were some great people there and some good things going on.
Good. Let's have disc number 7, please.
Disc number 7. Now, this is a work by Schoenberg, Arnold Schoenberg. Now, it's called Gurrelieder. Schoenberg is known mostly for his radical modernistic music. But he wrote Gurrelieder over a long period. He started it, I can't remember when, sort of late 1890s, possibly something like that. Left it for ages, came back to it later. But finished it off in the style in which he'd started it, which was a sort of late romantic style, not the modernist that he became. And there's a very interesting story, which may or may not be true, about Puccini, the Italian romantic opera composer, who heard that this new work by Schoenberg was going to be put on in Vienna. He travelled all the way to Vienna to hear this new work by Schoenberg, and came away very disappointed, because he was looking forward to sort of seeing some groundbreaking stuff going on, and here was this marvellous romantic stuff which he could have heard ages ago and could have written himself anyway. But it's an extraordinary work. It's a work for soloists and choir and orchestra about the legend of Gurrelieder. There's a king, Valdemar, who falls in love with a young woman, and his jealous wife kills her, and etc., etc., etc. And there's a Tuva, the dove, who sings about it. It's very, very beautiful. The reason that I've chosen it is because it's become a very special piece for Brenda and me. And very often, if we've got something to celebrate, a wedding anniversary or a birthday, or coming back together again when one of us has been away on a trip, or whatever it may be, we'll have a glass of bubbly and we'll put on Gurrelieder.
sound like yourself.
No. But great, these soaring, sweeping phrases. It's fabulous, I think.
Certainly doesn't sound like any Schoenberg that I've heard.
No, that's right.
So, Richard, from Staley Bridge, after 7 years, you did a change, and you went to be vicar rector of Hazel Grove in Stockport.
Yes, sort of down the south edge of Manchester. A similar sort of parish to Staley Bridge in a way, perhaps a bit more comfortable generally, but again with pockets of deprivation, so a mixed parish. And I had a bigger team to work with there. It was quite a sort of large, active church, and some wonderful people there as well. And I was there for 10 years.
And I think during that time you went to Norway for a year.
We did, yes. We had the most wonderful year, which I've referred to before, in Norway. The most incredible country. Some of you will know it, I'm sure. It's a fabulous country. It's beautiful. I mean, the landscape is beautiful. It's long. There's hardly anybody lives there. It's just majestic. It's a wonderful place to live. Everything works properly. The infrastructure works because taxes are high. UK government, please take note. It is. It's a wonderful country. It's in every way. And we were very privileged to live there for a year.
So why did you live there?
We went there because Brenda was asked if she would go and cover someone's job at the music school in Oslo, similar to the job she was doing at Chetham's, for a year. And she was given leave to do that. I'd already planned a 3-month sabbatical for the following year. The bishop very kindly said, let's work with this. So I had extended leave, unpaid leave. I went to Norway for the year. We had a year out there together. I was looking after, as it happened, the Anglican church in Oslo for some of that time because they were in vacancy, so I was able to help them and so on. We had a wonderful year, did a lot of travelling. We went up to the far north twice, so we saw the midnight sun up there and we saw the northern lights twice, and it was a really magical and wonderful year. We were very, very blessed to do it, and it was all sorts of different activities and jobs we were doing while we were there.
Great. Now I know that when you came here, Stockport were very upset. They didn't want you to come. But how
they had to say that, didn't they?
Well, of course they did. Well, no, I think they meant it. But how did what made you decide to come here? How did you?
Well, what happened is we'd been coming to this part of the world for holidays, for short breaks, for years, quite a number of years actually, starting with through Jeremy, as we mentioned earlier on. And to this area, Blakeney, Clyde, Wiverton, we stayed in lots of cottages around here. And then Brenda happened to notice in the Church Times one day an advert for here, for the Gwilym Valley benefice. And we looked at this, we thought, wouldn't that be lovely? But wouldn't that be lovely? And
I hope you still think it.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be lovely, and is that what God wants us to do, is not necessarily the same thing. But we opened that door, and I talked to the bishop down here and just discovered a bit more, and felt right, so I applied for the job and was shortlisted, and happily, thank you very much indeed, I was appointed here. And we were just thrilled to come to what we knew was a lovely place, a lovely area. We didn't know the churches, didn't know the people here, apart from one or two. So all the joy of all those discoveries was ahead of us. But we were thrilled and very excited to come down here. And we're still thrilled and very excited to be here. And we love it. We're very, very happy. Yeah.
Well, we're so glad you came, and it's a shame that we had COVID and lockdown and so on, but you did brilliantly over that. Brilliant. Now, just one last big question. Somebody said to me, ask him some difficult questions. What do you see as the greatest challenge to the church and to the world?
Okay.
In a word.
So we'll finish around about 11:30 tonight. Is that right? The world, in many ways, is in a bit of a mess at the moment. I think we'd all agree. There are a lot of things that we find very troubling, from climate change to Ukraine and all the rest of it. A lot of what needs to happen in the world is out of our control, though not all of it, and we must all become activists and prophets. What needs to happen in the church, I think, because we know that across the board, overall, church attendance is still going down, though the rate of that decline is now lessening. Statistics seem to tell us. I believe passionately that what the world and everyone in it really needs to know is the love of God, and the difference that understanding and experiencing the love of God makes in a human life. And all of us can have a part, all of us, those of us who have faith, can be a part of helping to spread that message and encouraging people to come to church. And just giving themselves the opportunity to experience, again, what that means. It's not that churches everywhere are declining. They're not, of course. Some churches are growing. And in other parts of the world, churches are growing very quickly. But there is a sense in this country in which generally Christianity is being forgotten or sidelined. But I believe it's just the most important and wonderful message in the world. And all of us, and I want to be part of this and help other people and encourage other people to be part of this, just to help people to know that this is not just a collection of weird old-fashioned stories, but something which is completely life-changing. And I believe God has got some wonderful things to do.
Thank you, Richard. We need disc number 8 now, please.
Disc number 8. Brenda and I love Greece. We've been to Greece on holiday many times over the years, and it's a very special place for us. And I think if I was on my desert island, a little bit of Greek music would just lift the spirits wonderfully. Andreas is here. How lovely to have a Greek here. You know? I was thinking when we started, and we started with Sibelius, and I was thinking how lovely that we've got Maketa as a Finnish person here for Sibelius, and we're ending with Andreas, a Greek person here for Greek music. This is from one of the albums of Greek music that we've got. I can't remember what the track is called, but it's lovely. Yes. I'll leave them third.
Thank you very much,
You didn't know you
Brenda
were
and
going to get
Andreas.
dancing as well tonight, did you?
Now, Richard, you're on a desert island all by yourself. How are you going to live? How are your DIY skills? How's your fishing?
Fishing. I think I've been fishing once in my life, a long time ago. I wouldn't have a clue, actually. I think I would just need the fish to jump out of the water and into some sort of makeshift pan on some wood which I'd burnt.
Right. Now, if you have to choose one of your discs, because the others might get washed overboard and you're only left with one, which would you choose?
Yeah, this is even more difficult than just whittling it down to 8. But I think perhaps Gwilym, the Schoenberg, which is just, yeah, it's just an amazing thing, the whole work.
Okay. You have the Bible. We've actually got a copy down here, and Shakespeare. But you can have one other book. What's it to be?
Well, this is great for me, really, because the Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare would be exactly what I would ask for anyway. So that's a good start. So I thought if I've got those two, with all the riches contained within them, how about something to make me smile? So I'd like to ask, please, for the collected works of P.G. Wodehouse.
Okay. I think we'll let you have the collected works. And you can have one luxury item.
I think the rules say that my luxury item cannot be Brenda.
They do.
That was her suggestion. No, so if I could, I'd like a grand piano, because I would just love to be able to play it. I'd never get bored. Is that all right?
Yes, we'll let you have a grand piano.
Can I have a piano stool as well?
Yes, I think that's all right.
And can I have some tuning equipment? I'd have to train myself to tune a piano, but I'd have plenty of time to train myself. Is that all right?
Yes, we'll let you have those.
Thank you.
Richard Lawry, thank you very much for coming to join us this evening and for sharing your life with us. It's been great fun, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. You want this? Is it?
On behalf of the friends of the church, I've been asked to say a few on the other hand,
I don't even know whether it's bubbly or not. I've no idea.
Thank you, Lord. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
The whole thing's been a pleasure.
Can I just say?
If you've enjoyed the evening, then don't forget that our collection, the donations bowl just by the door. See you again at the next event, or at one of the concerts at Clyde, Riverton, Blakeney, numerous feasts of good stuff. As somebody once said, I'd die without Mahler. But I'm not sure we've got any Mahler, but certainly a feast coming up.
Can I just say thank you, Tom, and thank you to all of the Friends of Blakeney team for organising this tonight, and yes. Can I also say I think it'd be an excellent new thing to introduce to have a bottle after every sermon. I think that'd be. I think the rest of the ministry team would also go along with that. I think that'd be nice. But thank you very much for coming tonight, folks. It's been lovely to see you here, and thanks for supporting us in this way. And is there any more refreshment? No. No more refreshment. Collection by the door. Thank you so much. Bye.
you.